Morning, my name is Doug. If you're new, I'm one of the pastors here. So glad all y'all are here today. And we are walking through our messages. We're walking through the book of Luke. It's a series that we're calling Jesus for Everyone, because that's what we keep finding threaded all through the Gospel of Luke, that Jesus is for the wanderers, for the worn out, and for especially the people that get overlooked. And so here we are today. We're in Luke 15, and this is kind of a sub-series of our series. We're calling this month of messages or so here in Luke 15, we're calling it Lost and Found. These are lost and found stories. And so I want to ask you kind of three related quick questions. Have you ever wandered and wondered how to get home? It's a story for you in this chapter, if that's you. Have you ever felt unheard or unseen, like you've maybe just kind of fallen through the cracks? Well, there's a story in this chapter for you. And we don't talk about this story because this whole story, the whole chapter, for those of us who've been in church a long time, have you ever struggled to celebrate when God's grace found someone that you didn't expect? Someone unlikely. Well, we're going to look at that today and in upcoming weeks. And we're going to actually look at how that relates to a big theme that rests over Luke chapter 15. It's one of the great questions that Jesus answers over and over. What kind of God is God? What kind of God is God? Through, actually, not just here in Luke 15, but all through Jesus' entire teaching, through his life, through his road and his death on the cross and his resurrection. Through all of it, Jesus shows us a God who is better than we could have ever imagined. So good that it can almost seem too good to be true. And that's where we're headed this morning. It's week 2 of our Lost and Found series, so it'll be on the screen, but if you have your Bible and you want to turn with me, we're going to start in Luke chapter 15, verse 1, and I'll just start reading. Now the tax collectors and the sinners were gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So right here, the Pharisees, they thought they knew what God is like, but they were way off base. So, verse 3, then Jesus told them this parable. And I'll pause here. This is where Jesus tells the story that we covered last week about the lost sheep and how God is like a shepherd who goes searching until he finds this lost sheep and puts it on his shoulders and carries it home. And after church, I was out in the lobby, and the parents of 2 of our teenagers here at Hope, they sent and showed me this picture. It's on the screen. Right? Is he in here? This is Lincoln Rounds. How old is Lincoln now? 18. So he's really excited that he didn't know that was going to be up there. Maybe that's why he's not in the room right now. So somebody take a picture for Lincoln. All right. So today I'm going to touch briefly on the lost sheep again. But we're going to get to this next story because Jesus stacks up these stories. The lost sheep was the first one, and now he's going to build on that with the next story, verse 8. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." Verse 10, in the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. And then verse 11, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. And probably many of you here have heard at least part of this story, this last one, the story that's often called the story of the prodigal son. And we'll get there soon. And funny thing is, oftentimes we kind of skip these first 2 parables because we want to get to the home run hitter. We want to get to the prodigal son. But today we're going to linger with the sheep, and we're going to look at the lost coin because, next slide, together they reveal a clearer picture of the heart of God. And when you read these stories, at first, they kind of just sound like cute bedtime stories. A lamb, a coin, a rebellious kid. But we have to remember there is much more going on. See, if we look at the context right here, the life of Jesus at this time, when he tells these stories, a storm is brewing. Tensions are rising. Suspicions are growing about Jesus. Instead of, though, playing nice to pacify his critics, picture this, right in front of these Pharisees, these religious elites, and in front of the, sinners, both groups, Jesus tells all three of these stories. So it's same room, same audience, which understandably makes things more tense, not less. So although you can tell your kids these stories at bedtime or your grandkids these stories at bedtime, these are not just sweet little bedtime stories. These are actually at their core very challenging, very subversive stories. They are explaining why Jesus does what he does and why he treats people the way he treats people. Look back at verse 1 again here. It says, the tax collectors, the sinners gathering around to hear, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered. They're grumbling about who Jesus is hanging out with. See, Jesus already, we know this from previous stories in Luke, Jesus already had a reputation. He welcomed the wrong people. He ate with them. He treated them like family even before they got all straightened up and cleaned up. And that's a big deal in that culture because if you even had a meal with someone, table fellowship, having a meal with someone, that meant you accepted them. And so the Pharisees are seeing Jesus do this and they're thinking, listen, if this Jesus character was really from God, he would know he's got to keep his distance from those people. But Jesus here was building a new kind of family, the kind of family that invited outsiders to come in. And this infuriated the religious crowd. They had spent years and centuries building walls to keep those people out. But here comes Jesus, and he is tearing the walls down. So what kind of God is God? I mean, the Pharisees didn't get it. But Jesus makes it really clear here in chapter 15 of Luke. God is the kind of God who cares about lost sheep, lost coins, lost kids. And really the underlying question is a piercing one. It's a piercing question directed toward the religious elite in these stories. And the question Jesus is poking at them with is, guys, if God cares so deeply about the lost, why don't you? And I could even imagine Jesus saying, I understand, guys, I understand why you are mad, why you're angry, why you are grumbling and murmuring and confused. But honestly, I'm confused too as to why you don't receive sinners. See, that line, it's not written out in the text, but it's hidden in plain sight. One of those things for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Jesus is sending a message to them and to us. Listen, Luke 15 is about lost sheep, lost coins, and lost sons, but it's also about lost Pharisees, religious people who can't see their own need for God's grace. So Jesus says here about the sheep, verse 4, he says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep. He's aiming this question. And he's saying, which one of you wouldn't go after the one that takes off, right? Like who wouldn't do that? Wouldn't anyone do that? And again, at one level, Jesus is explaining himself here because they're criticizing him. He's explaining why he eats with sinners and tax collectors. He's saying, guys, listen, because they are like lost sheep, and who wouldn't go after lost sheep? What man among you, religious guys, wouldn't do such a thing? It's a no-brainer. And don't you just kind of wish that the scribes, the Pharisees, would have just said, now that you explain it like that, Jesus, now it makes total sense. Now we get it. This is why you befriend these people and eat with them. But that's not how it worked out. And here Jesus is actually using another rabbinical kind of method. He's being a bit sarcastic in how he confronts them. And because he uses the image of a shepherd, that's actually an extra little dig because shepherds were despised in the culture in that day. In that culture, there's no way you'd go out yourself for one stray sheep. If you even cared at all, you'd send a servant. You'd send kind of someone seen as a lower class laborer. You'd send them to go out and do the dirty work. You're never going to see a dignified Pharisee in their fine robes traipsing out through the mud after one dumb, stubborn sheep. Why? Because to them, one sheep didn't matter. So when Jesus asked the question, who of you wouldn't go looking? The Pharisees all knew the answer. Jesus, none of us. Not one of us would go. But they hear the insult Jesus is pointing toward them, and that makes them angrier. Doesn't somebody think it would have been interesting if somebody would have given Jesus a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People? Like interesting, right? Verse 5, Jesus adds, when the shepherd finds it, he lays it on his shoulders. Now that's hard work right there because when a sheep lays down, it doesn't budge. You got to like carry it all the way home. And isn't that just like Jesus? Jesus is saying here, I'm not ashamed to do the work of a lowly shepherd. It is not beneath me to take off my royal robes and stomp through the mud. And then when he brings the sheep home, he doesn't complain. He throws a party. He says, rejoice with me and celebrate. I found my lost sheep. So what kind of God is God? Well, he's that kind of God. So yes, says Jesus, I will do the dirty work. No, I won't despise it. Yes, I will receive sinners and outsiders and eat with them as friends. And you guys, Pharisees, you scribes, I know that confuses you. I know it bothers you and even angers you, but you know what confuses and bothers and angers me? That you don't. Because there's more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents, who turns, who comes home, than over 99 who don't need to. Or think they don't. See, friends, hear me. The reason religious people like this don't get grace is because they don't think that they need it. And even as I say that, I go, you know what? Sometimes, honestly, I kind of find myself doing that too. Like sometimes I know that I forget. I think it's easy for us who've been around church for a while, and especially maybe and have a little more scriptural knowledge, it can be really easy for us to forget. And I see as a pastor, I see people forget. Maybe people that even you go, wow, you know a lot about the Bible and about Jesus, and not you, but we forget. We forget, and sometimes those folks get mad and they leave a church because they're lost in religion, in judgment. They're lost in fear. They're unable or unwilling to even wonder, to even consider that maybe God is at work trying to soften them and heal their own hearts, so they get mad and claim those people are too soft on sin. That stuff's dangerous. And when I see this, I always, because I've done it myself before, but when I see someone doing this, I always want to just say, hey, listen, before you go down that road of anger and judging, just like be really careful, because you kind of sound like the people that Jesus was confronting. So just slow down, be careful. And then, so Jesus talks about the lost sheep this way, very confusing for them. And then I picture him not even taking a breath, he moves to the next story, verse 8. Suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. 10 silver coins. Now, everybody knew back then especially, that this is not spare change. This is likely part of her life savings or even part of her dowry, and losing one of them was devastating. So Jesus asks, again, picture of Pharisees criticizing Jesus, muttering. Jesus is telling this story. He asks of the Pharisees, what woman among you wouldn't do this? Which again is Jesus kind of poking here because it's interesting. Just a side note here. Jesus makes a woman the hero in front of a bunch of religious dudes that dismiss women. And so Jesus right here makes a woman a hero in a parable, a hero of the story while he's poking at them. He honors her, which again, this is radical. Just saying, this is just pointing out, it's just radical for Jesus to do this back then. But this woman, she's relentless, lamp lit. She's burning costly oil. She's got the broom out, every corner swept until she finds it. And then again, same thing that happened with the sheep, there's joy. Twice Jesus says it. Joy when she finds it. Joy again as she calls her neighbors and says, good news, rejoice with me. I found my coin. But again, this is a confrontation to the Pharisees because they are hearing what Jesus is saying to them subversively when he says, what, woman among you? And they'd be like, seriously, a woman? They had very little respect for women. They didn't really care about people that weren't wealthy because they were wealthy. So one coin wouldn't phase them. So talking about a peasant woman's desperate search, that's actually kind of beneath their notice. But Jesus is saying right here, guys, this is what God is like. That's the kind of God we have. This is what God is like. So what kind of God is God? Well, so far we've learned that he's like a royal shepherd who takes off his robes and stomps through the mud after one stubborn lamb. That work is not beneath him. And God is like a relentless woman who moves heaven and earth to recover something or someone that everyone else overlooks. Maybe that's the subtext of what Jesus is saying, guys. That's why I accept sinners. That's why I befriend outsiders. That's why I eat with them and treat them as valuable. And I know, Pharisees, I know this confuses you. I know it bothers you. I know it angers you. But what confuses and bothers and angers me is that you don't value the lost. You don't rejoice when they're found. You don't love imperfect people, so don't tell me you know God, because your life looks nothing like anyone who knows the heart of God. So it's a little tense, these stories here. Still think they're cute little bedtime stories? No, not really, no. See, here's an interesting thing, a side note here. When a sheep gets lost, it's not usually rebellion, like, bah, I hate you. Thank you. I had one impersonation left. Troy told me, don't do it. It was left over from last week. If he wouldn't have snuck out of the room, we were going to have a sheep calling competition, and he would have had to go first. But a sheep, they're not saying, I'm leaving, I hate you. But if you get to the younger son in the third story that we'll get to in a few weeks, like he's a little bit like that. What's interesting in that story, the father doesn't chase him. He lets him go. But back to sheep, they just wander, they get distracted. It's like they pick up the scent of something that smells good, and then off they go. Kind of sounds like you and me, right? Not usually like I'm going, hey, I'm mad at God, I hate God, I'm out of here. It's like, no, truly, I love God. I never mean to leave God, but oh, wow, that's kind of cool. I'm going to go wander over here. And we talked about that in our small group this last week, because that's how we get lost sometimes, right? You take a path you didn't mean to take, you go the wrong direction, didn't realize it, until one day you look up and you go, how did I get here? This is not where I want to be. This is not how I want to live. And by the way, if that's you today, if you're here today and you connect with, you kind of identify with that lost sheep, if you're wondering, how did I get here and how do I get home? Good news. You've come to the right place. And we'd love to help. So that's the sheep. Sheep just wander, they get distracted. But now think about the coin. right? Sheep got distracted, but a coin, think about this, a coin, literally the coin has no choice at all. It's a coin. It is not responsible. It just got lost. And I sometimes wonder if that's true for some people too. But stick with the coin. The coin, it just fell through the cracks. Just fell through the cracks. And listen, if someone doesn't get sweeping, if someone doesn't get looking, if someone doesn't start searching carefully, then this coin may never get found. Because unlike the sheep, when a shepherd's out looking in the field, looking for the sheep, at least the sheep can go, make some noise. Like, hey, over here, right? I'm not going to make my sheep noise. Yeah. Help me, right? Thank you. There we go. Right there. There he is. That helps, right? Sheep can make a sound. The shepherd goes, there you are. But a coin can't make a sound. It just sits there. It never rejected God. A coin has no concept of God. So I picture these lost coins as what Jesus called the least of these in Matthew 25, the forgotten, the overlooked. In our culture, they'd be the outsiders that often get treated like they're disposable, which, those are two words that never belong together, disposable people. But in Jesus' day, they were lepers and sinners and prostitutes, tax collectors, pushed aside. Just get out of the way is what society said. But Jesus actually touched them, saw them, went to them. And so it makes me wonder, who are the lost coins today? Who are the lost coins? And just a few things I thought of. People with developmental or intellectual delays or disabilities. Some of them have little capacity to understand faith or God, and they can easily fall through the cracks. There was a stretch of time when I went back to Minnesota for a little while, and I worked with a company that I was would take adults with developmental delays out to go grocery shopping and just do whatever. I'd be assigned to one of my favorites, a guy named Bruce, and we'd go out. And it took me just a couple visits to realize, his file said how old he was intellectually. And I realized, okay, so what would a third grader want to do for fun? And we started to do what a third grader would do for fun. And then when we would talk, because sometimes he'd ask about God, and I'd have to go, okay, how do I talk to a third grader about God? But Bruce was like a lost coin. Other lost coins today might include people living with addiction, or neighbors without housing, people battling depression, folks who are in prison, incarcerated, maybe teenagers with no safe adult to talk to. Lost coins. I think of global tragedies today. Famine in Gaza, where there are starving people. I think of refugees from Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, and so many other places. Listen, they are lost coins. They aren't mad at God. Many of them don't even have a clear concept of God. And seeing this, even seeing it this way here and around our world, it kind of makes you want to pick up a broom, doesn't it? So what kind of God is God? Well, Jesus says here he's like a relentless woman with the broom, touching the untouchable, sweeping every corner, searching carefully for lost and broken people. And I don't think we have to read between the lines too much to see the message he's sending, because he's saying, Pharisees and scribes, I know it confuses and bothers and angers you that I do this. But I got to tell you, what confuses, bothers, and angers me is that you're the religious guys and you don't. You don't. It was about 20 years ago, I think. that my pastor, Dave Johnson, who many of you have met because he comes down here every March, but 20 plus years ago, probably, Dave told us about a guy named Clarence Jordan. Some of you might know this name. Clarence Jordan wrote the Cotton Patch Gospels back in the 60s. He preached in the South. He preached in overalls. Like that was part of his deal, which is really pushing it in the South back in that time especially. But he ministered during a time of intense racial turmoil, and he preached the grace of God and the heart of Jesus into this kind of southern culture where there was a lot of churchy legalism, and he described what the kingdom of God looked like, unlike most preachers were doing at the time. And I remember hearing that when he got to this parable on the woman and the lost coin, he just went off. I've heard him speak on an old recording. He has this thick southern drawl. Maybe I shouldn't even try this, but he asks the question, what does she do? Well, she gets a broom. She sweeps and sweeps and sweeps. She lights a lamp and she sweeps until what? Until she wore the broom out? No. Until the lamp went out? No. How long did she sweep? Until she found it. And how long was that? As long as necessary. And I remember hearing that, like everything in me just shouts, yes, yes, and I want to go find a broom because it's time to get sweeping. But he kept talking. He actually kind of pushed a little further. He asked us to wonder. He asked the people that he told this story to wonder what if God keeps on sweeping until he finds it? Meaning, what if God even kept on sweeping after death? And, Dave, he said what I was immediately thinking, like, before I could dismiss that, I'm like, that doesn't fit into my theology. But before I could push it away, started thinking about lost little ones, lost coins, flooded by pictures of haunting images that we've seen, starving children in Sudan, flies crawling on their faces, blank stares in their eye, mom sitting next to them desperately, not knowing what to do. These little children, lost coins, who may never hear the name of Jesus. Lost coins. And Jordan here is inviting us to just imagine, what if? What if when they die, the first thing they see is someone like this relentless woman sweeping the floor looking for them? And when she sees them, just imagine she shouts for joy, there you are, I've been looking for you, welcome home. And then she calls her friends and says, come and rejoice with me. She's home, he's home, look who I found over here. Now hear me, I'm not building a theology here or asking for somebody to come debate about this. I'm just inviting us to wonder. Troy pointed out Jesus conquered death, hell, and the grave, so could there be more going on than we might grasp? Maybe, maybe not, but either way, just wonder with me, what if? What if? So I called Dave on Thursday, Dave Johnson, and we were talking about this, and he told me that he preached this parable at a very conservative Baptist church in Ireland, right? Dave's older than me, and he can risk that stuff, I guess. But he said at the end, he asked them to wonder, maybe God's like, you never know, like what if? And afterwards, one of the elders came up to him, interesting, and said, hey, Dave, there's a missionary woman from Afghanistan here who she wants to talk to you. At first, Dave thought, am I in trouble with the Baptists just for wondering, Makes me grateful to be here at Hope, where I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But he went back, and this missionary, she was home on leave, and she was deeply broken, actually. She's not there to confront him. She was suffering from PTSD, all the trauma of her ministry. And through tears, she explained, the prisons where I served in Afghanistan, they were filled with young girls. Not because they committed crimes, but because they were raped and dared to speak out. The Taliban and the culture surrounding that, I actually believe that brought shame on these girls' families, and so the Taliban put girls in prison. She said to Dave, I loved those girls, but I couldn't tell them about Jesus because if they received Jesus, they could be killed, and then I could be killed for telling or imprisoned or deported. And it got so hard because now I live with this ache because I thought they're doomed because nothing that I did to care for them actually mattered in eternity. Then she broke down weeping. She said, but what if? What if God is really like you wondered? What if God is like that woman who won't stop sweeping? Because if there's a chance that that's true, it changes everything. So what kind of God is God? Now, let me just say this. I don't know how it will be after this life, and I'm not claiming that I do, but if it was like that, let me ask you a question. If it was like that, would you rejoice? Or would you grumble? Would you grumble, it's bad theology. That's not how it works. Just fine. Push all that aside just for a minute. Would you rejoice? Would you grumble? Because your response to that tells you something. It tells you something. Rejoice or grumble, that question, your response to that question tells you something. Which leads to a regular question we ask around here. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in the story? Where do you see yourself in this story? Are you the lost sheep? You're the lost sheep. You don't hate God, but you've wandered and chased something that smelled good, but now you don't know how to get back. Just hear me. God is not angry with you. He's looking for you. He's looking for you. You can go to the next slide. By the way, if that's you today, if you're that lost sheep, just make a little noise, which means cry out to God. Just cry out to God. And let one of us pray with you after the service. So are you the sheep in the story? Are you maybe the Pharisee? Or maybe you're going, I know I can lean that way. Are you skeptical? Are you grumbling? I mean, honestly, folks like that rarely stay here very long. But if you notice just a little bit of that even in your heart, just hear me, and I want to say this with kindness, you don't have to be that way. In fact, that's not the heart, the true heart God put in you when you came to follow Jesus. You don't have to be that way. So come join us. Pick up a broom. Pick up a broom. And that's where many of you are in this story. Your hearts hear this and you respond, I just want to pick up a broom. I want to sweep and find. I want to spend the rest of my life going after lost coins, because if we don't go looking, they won't be found. See, that's why we're here, y'all. The local church is meant to be a community of sweepers, seeking those who have fallen through the cracks, the least and the lost, the tired and the broken, the not good enough, inviting outsiders to become part of a grace-based family where anyone can find and follow Jesus and do it together. It's why we gather. It's why we have kids and we love our kids ministry, and that's why we teach them about Jesus. It's why we invest in our teenagers. In fact, more than half of our students come from homes where their parents don't attend church anywhere. So we're sweeping, y'all. We're sweeping. Worship team, why don't you come? This worship team right here, that's why our worship team leads us. It's why our tech and greeter and coffee teams and our heroic landscape team do what they do. They are a part of sweeping. Our elders, our leadership team, they are sweeping. And listen, I know sometimes we get tired or we get a little grumpy or we get exhausted by people who criticize and really have no idea. But then we stop and we remember, oh yeah, right. This is part of it. We are sweeping. We're sweeping. You know, we're sweeping in the things that we do to partner with San Marcos Elementary School and helping the teachers and students at that Title I school over here. We're sweeping when those of us who serve at Matthews Crossing show up at the food bank or we donate to the food bank. We're sweeping in refugee advocacy. We're sweeping at Naomi House and the Navajo Nation with foster kids. We're sweeping with One Mission down in Mexico, building homes. We sweep when we listen to each other and carry one another's burdens and offer a place to belong in our small groups. Friends, we sweep whenever God points and we follow. And why would we do that? Because we have a God, listen, we have a God like this. A God who's like a lowly shepherd who takes off his royal robes, wades into the mud to pick us up and carry us home. That kind of work is not beneath our God. And we have a God who's like a relentless woman who just won't stop sweeping and refuses to give up the search for those who fell through the cracks. That too is our God. And don't you just want to follow Jesus into that? Not to just simply be admirers of Jesus, but to be followers of Jesus, offering his love and grace to everyone. So, here we go. As we get ready to respond and sing, the big question right now is, where is God? Where is God asking you, inviting you to sweep? Where and who? God, we just pause even right now with that question. What do you want us to know about where you're inviting each of us to sweep and who? What do you want us to know? And friends, just pause and listen for what God might speak to your heart. Those of you that had a sense of something, especially if it might even surprise you a little bit. God, that's what you want me to know. Okay, God, now ask him, God, what do you want me to do? God, what do you want me to do? And just pause and listen. He'll give you a next step. What do you want me to do, God? And ask our prayer team to come up front here. And as we begin to sing in a moment, any of you are invited for prayer. And if you're a lost sheep, come on up and let us lift you up in prayer. And if you're a sweeper and you're asking the Spirit of God to show you the next place to sweep, come for prayer. And if you've been grumbling, you can lay that down and ask God what it looks like to trade out that critique for a broom that leads to celebration. I'm going to pray and then we'll sing. God, I'm grateful that you are like a waiting father and like a humble shepherd and like a relentless woman who just won't give up on your lost creation. Help us, God, to be part of what you're doing in this world, that we would become like lowly shepherds and sweeping women and men and patient fathers and mothers who join in your search. Show us, Spirit of God, Holy Spirit, show us exactly how you're inviting us to do that here in our own cities and neighborhoods, to be sweepers with Jesus. How long will we sweep? Till the broom wears out? No. Until the lamp goes out? No. How long will we sweep? Until we have found them. And how long will that be? As long as necessary. Amen. Would you stand with me? We'll sing together.